A power of attorney, that's the first one, and if you only sort out one thing on this list, make it this one, because it's the one that matters while you're still very much alive. And I want to start there deliberately, because I think most people hear documents and immediately think about wills and dying, and then they get uncomfortable and close the video. This isn't about that. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is about living, specifically about what happens if you're temporarily unable to handle your own affairs and there's nobody who's allowed to do it for you. Here's what a power of attorney actually does, in plain language. It names a person who can act on your behalf on money matters if you can't. Pay your bills, deal with the bank, sign something that needs signing. And here's the bit that catches people out, and it caught my friend Margaret's family out badly. Being somebody's daughter doesn't give you that right. Being somebody's sister doesn't either. Banks will not talk to your family about your account just because they're your family. They legally can't. So Margaret's in hospital for 6 weeks, and her mortgage payment is due, and her daughter is standing in a bank, being told very politely that there is nothing they can do. And there wasn't. Not until they'd been through the courts, which took months and cost real money. All of that was preventable with one signed piece of paper. Now, an important caveat, and I'll repeat it a few times today. I'm not a lawyer, and the exact name and form of this document varies enormously depending on where you live. In some places it's a durable power of attorney, elsewhere it's called something else entirely, and the rules for what makes it valid are different everywhere. So take this as what to go and ask about, not as instructions. What I can tell you is that some version of this exists everywhere, and every adult should have one. 2 things worth knowing when you do it. First, durable, or the local equivalent, matters. You want the one that stays in force if you become incapacitated, because a plain one can stop working at exactly the moment you need it. Ask specifically about that. Second, choose the person carefully, and then actually tell them. A power of attorney sitting in a drawer that nobody knows about does nothing at all. Hi, by the way, come in, sit down. Here's what today is. I put all of this in order about 3 years ago, sat down at this table over a couple of weekends and did the lot. And I want to walk you through the 6 things I ended up with. I'll be honest about what cost money and what didn't, and about the one I still haven't done properly. And I'll say up front, this was nowhere near as grim as I expected. I put it off for years imagining it would be a depressing sort of afternoon, and it wasn't. It was mostly just admin, and I felt tremendously light afterward. Number 2. A healthcare directive, and someone named to speak for you. This is the medical twin of the first one, and for a woman living alone I'd argue it's just as important. It does 2 jobs. First, it names the person who can make medical decisions if you can't speak for yourself. Second, it writes down what you'd want, the treatments you would or wouldn't accept in various situations. Again, the names vary by where you live. Healthcare proxy, medical power of attorney, advance directive, living will. Sometimes these are 2 separate documents, sometimes one. Your doctor's office will usually know exactly what the local version is called, and quite often they'll have the forms right there. That's the easiest place to start, and it's free. And here's why it matters twice over when you live alone. If you're in a hospital and unable to speak, someone has to make decisions. If you haven't named anyone, the decision falls to whoever the law says, which might be a relative you're not close to, who lives 4 states away and hasn't the faintest idea what you'd want. Or, if you haven't got close family, it can end up in a much more complicated place. Naming someone yourself takes 10 minutes, and then, and this is the part people skip, have the conversation with them, actually tell them what you'd want. The document is the legal permission, the conversation is what lets them do it without agonizing. I had that talk with my sister over a cup of tea, and it was awkward for about 4 minutes, and then it was completely fine, and honestly, I think it was a relief to both of us. Give a copy to your doctor to keep on file, and keep one at home where it can be found. Number 3. A will, even if you think you haven't got much. Now here's where I'd been putting things off for years, and I want to tell you the reasoning that finally got me to do it, because it might be the same reasoning that's kept you. I thought, I don't have children, I haven't got a fortune, surely it'll just sort itself out. And what I eventually understood is that sorting itself out means the law decides, according to a formula, in an order you have no say over. Which might be fine, or it might send things to a cousin you haven't spoken to in 20 years, while a friend who's been like family gets nothing. And it's not really about the money. For me, it was about specific things. A piece of furniture that was my mother's, which I want a particular person to have. There's no legal mechanism by which anyone would know that if I didn't write it down. If you own a house, this stops being optional, in my view. Property without a will is where families genuinely get tangled up for years. On cost, this is the one thing on the list where I'd say pay a professional. There are cheap forms and websites, and I understand the appeal, but the failure mode of a badly made will is that it doesn't work, and you're not around to fix it. Ask what a simple will costs in your area. In a lot of places, it's a few $100s and an hour of somebody's time, and it's frequently much less than people assume. And if you've got an old one from decades ago, go and read it. Circumstances change. Executors move away or die. It's worth checking. Number 4. The map, where everything is. This one costs nothing, takes an afternoon, and I'd say it's the most useful document I own. It's a list, that's all. Which bank you use, and roughly what's there. Not account numbers, we'll get to that. Where the pension is. What insurance you have and with whom. Which utilities are on direct debit. Where the physical papers live. Mine says, the grey folder in the bottom drawer of the desk in the spare room. And here's why this matters more than any of the legal documents. Because a will and a power of attorney tell someone what they're allowed to do. This tells them what actually exists. Remember my friend whose husband died? She spent weeks going through drawers trying to work out which accounts existed. Not because he'd hidden anything, because he just knew it, in his head, the way we all do. There was an insurance policy she found 8 months later, entirely by accident. Knowing things in your head is worth nothing to anyone but you. Now, the security question, because people ask, and it's a fair concern. My map does not have account numbers or passwords on it. It says where the bank is, not how to get into it. So if a stranger read it, they'd learn which bank I use, which is not very much. The numbers live separately with the actual documents. That way the map can be findable, which is the whole point of it. I'd add one modern thing to yours that I nearly missed. The digital accounts. The email address everything comes to. What's set to auto-renew. Which subscriptions exist. Anything that only lives on a phone. That's a whole category of your life that leaves no paper trail at all, and it's the part families get most stuck on now. Number 5. The house and insurance file. One folder, one place, and I keep mine in the bottom drawer of the desk. The deed, or the mortgage papers. The insurance policy, the actual policy, not just the renewal letter, with the policy number and the claims phone number. The property tax records, the receipts and paperwork from any significant work done on the house, which matters if you ever sell, and matters for warranties. And I'll tell you the practical reason this earns a spot beyond the obvious. When something goes wrong with a house, a leak, a storm, a break-in, you need the policy number and the claims number immediately, and you need it while you're upset and there's water coming through the ceiling. Not buried in an email from 3 years ago. I've also got a page in there where I write what's been done to this house and when, the year the furnace was serviced, when the water heater went and what it cost, when the roof was last looked at. It's a small thing, and it's saved me money more than once, because when a tradesman tells me something needs doing, I can look and see when it was last done. And once a year, read your insurance policy. Actually read it. I found out I was underinsured by a substantial margin because the value of the house had moved and the policy hadn't. That was a 20-minute read that could have been a catastrophe. Number 6. the one-page emergency sheet. This is the one that lives out in the open, and it's the only one on this list that isn't in a drawer. Mine is one side of one sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve on the side of the fridge. And it's deliberately the opposite of everything else on this list. It contains nothing private at all, because it needs to be findable by a stranger. What's on it? Who to call, in order, with a note beside each saying why, where the water shutoff is, the electrical panel, the gas, who has a spare key, my doctor, and my pharmacy, what happens to the dog, and who takes her, where the folders are for everything else. That last line is the important one. This page is a map, not a filing cabinet. Its whole job is to point at where the real information lives. The moment you start putting actual details on it, it becomes something you have to hide, and a hidden page is a page nobody finds. Emergency services and anyone helping you will look in the kitchen. That's just where people look. So it goes on the fridge, and it can only say things I don't mind being read. I told my neighbor it exists and where it is. That took 30 seconds, and it doubles the value of the whole thing, because a page nobody knows about is barely better than no page. The one I still haven't done properly. I promised honesty. My will names an executor who is now in her 70s herself, and I've been meaning to think about that for about 2 years. It's not urgent, she's in excellent health, but it's the sort of thing that becomes urgent without warning, and I know it. I mention it because I don't want this to sound like I've got a perfect drawer of perfect paperwork. I've got a good enough drawer with one thing in it I'm putting off, which is probably the realistic version for most of us, where it all lives, and who knows, one folder, one place. And at least 2 people who know where that place is. I want to say that clearly because it's the mistake I see most often. People do the work, they get the will, they sign the power of attorney, and then they file it so carefully and so privately that nobody can find it. A document nobody knows about does not exist, legally or practically. So, my sister knows, my neighbor knows there's a folder and roughly where, and there's a line on the fridge page pointing at it, 3 routes to the same drawer, so that's the 6. Power of attorney, healthcare directive, a will, the map of what exists, the house and insurance file, and the one-page sheet on the fridge. And here's what I actually want to leave you with, because I know how a video like this sounds and I want to correct it. I expected this to be a sad afternoon. It really wasn't. It was 2 Saturdays at this table, with a cup of tea and a phone, and 1 appointment with a solicitor, and then it was done. And what I felt afterward was not somber at all. I felt about 10 pounds lighter, and I couldn't have told you beforehand what the weight even was. Because I'd been carrying it. All of it. The low hum of nobody else knows how any of this works, and if something happened it would be a mess for whoever had to sort it out. I'd been carrying that around for years without ever quite looking at it, the way you do. Writing it down set it down. That's the whole thing, and that's what I'd say to anyone hesitating. We treat this sort of preparation as though it's pessimism, as though getting ready for something means expecting it. It's precisely the opposite. I think about this less than I did before, not more. It's handled. It's in the drawer, I can get on with things. So if you do one thing after this, find out what the power of attorney is called, where you live, and ring somebody about it. That's a phone call. That's the whole first step, and it's the one that protects you while you're alive. Now I'd genuinely like to hear from you on this one, because I know some of you have been through the other side of it, sorting out somebody else's affairs. What did you wish they'd had written down? What made it harder than it needed to be? Put it in the comments, because that's the sort of thing that actually makes people go and do this, far more than me sitting here telling them to. And if you like this kind of practical, honest talk about living on your own, you're very welcome here. Give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to stay, and I'll see you next time. Take good care of yourself. Bye for now.